This painting is lying to you. It pretends to be a quiet winter scene. Kids skating, tidy roofs, friendly mountains in the back. But every choice the painter makes is pushing you toward a story that isn't actually there. But the more time you spend inside this painting, the more it stops being a landscape and starts to feel like a whole world. A world that doesn't particularly care whether the tiny people inside it live or die. This is Pieter Bruegel the Elder's Hunters in the Snow, painted in 1565, and it's one of those works that quietly tries to fit the entire human condition into a single winter's day. Tragedy, comedy, danger, resilience, everything is here at the same time, compressed under a low, greenish sky. Bruegel is painting in the Low Countries in the mid-16th century, and a moment when nature and politics are both turning hostile. Europe is entering the harshest phase of what we now call the Little Ice Age. Winters are brutal. Rivers freeze so solid that commerce stops. Birds literally drop out of the sky from the cold. Crops fail. Firewood becomes a luxury. For people in Bruegel's world, this isn't pretty snow. This is a threat. Winter is the season that decides who makes it to spring. At the same time, the region is ruled by the Spanish Habsburgs. Tensions are rising between a Protestant-leaning, increasingly wealthy population and a distant Catholic king who taxes them heavily and polices their beliefs. Within a year of this painting, mobs will be smashing religious images in churches, and a long, violent revolt will begin. So when Bruegel paints a winter landscape, he isn't just painting weather. He's painting pressure. Climatic, political, spiritual pressure, pressing down on everything. Now, let your eye move across the painting. We're floating high above the scene, almost at crow level. It's a strange vantage point, too high to be one of the villagers, too low to be God. You and I are hovering, watching, a little detached. That distance already suggests something philosophical. This is the view from above, the exercise where you imagine you're looking down on human life and everyone becomes tiny, ant-like, equally fragile. From up here, the very first thing that usually catches your attention is the group in the lower left. 3 hunters and a pack of dogs, trudging through deep snow. This is the painting's title, but they're surprisingly small and exhausted for being the main characters. Look at their bodies. Their backs are slightly bent, heads lowered. They lean into the slope with that specific heaviness you only get when you're walking through wet snow in heavy boots. Bruegel is a ruthless observer of posture. You can feel the weight of every step. And what did all that effort produce? Hung from a stick over one man's shoulder is a single, skinny fox. Not a stag, not a deer, just this meager, reddish bundle of fur. It's almost insulting. Their patron saint hangs from the inn sign just behind them, Saint Hubert kneeling before the miraculous stag. But the sign itself is broken, dangling by one hinge, as if even the saint of hunters has failed them. The dogs are just as defeated, tails tucked, heads down, ribs showing. They're not leaping proudly after prey, they're just trying to get home. Bruegel gives each dog a different shape and gesture, but the mood is the same: exhausted disappointment. If you look carefully at the snow in front of the lead hunter, there are delicate tracks, curving away and disappearing, the traces of a rabbit or hare they didn't catch, the one that got away. It's such a small detail, but it changes the whole story. The failure isn't generic, it just happened. Success was here a moment ago, and now it's gone. This is Bruegel's tragic register of effort and failure. The part of life where you do everything right and still come back carrying almost nothing. Now glance up, just a little, to the left. There's an inn tucked into the brick building. People cluster around a bright fire. Sparks jump into the winter air. This is the only truly warm light in the entire painting. Everything else is cold daylight. Here you get orange, red, smoke, and even maybe a promise of meat. But it's not exactly comforting. The sign of the inn, with its saint hangs askew, creaking. Warmth is provisional. Institutions are fragile. Even the place that should offer shelter looks a bit precarious. Already Bruegel is setting up a contrast. The hunters above, bent under their invisible burden, and this little pocket of heat and preparation for feast. Follow the line of bare trees down the hill. Bruegel plants them like dark vertical bars, cutting the canvas and guiding your gaze. They form a kind of slow staircase that leads you, almost forces you, toward the middle of the painting, where the snow levels out and the mood changes. Because once you reach the valley, everything becomes lighter. On the frozen ponds below, tiny figures skate, slide, fall, get back up. Some are playing golf, a kind of proto-hockey. Others push sleds, spin tops, chase each other. There's a chaotic playfulness to this cluster of black silhouettes. You almost hear the scrape of iron on ice, the shouts, the laughter. These people live in the same winter as the hunters. They breathe the same cold air. But their body language is the complete opposite. They are so open, expansive, and weightless. While 3 men and a pack of dogs drag themselves home in defeat, dozens of people are literally gliding. And this is one of Bruegel's biggest insights. Tragedy and comedy are not separate chapters of life. They happen simultaneously. At the exact moment someone is missing the rabbit that would have fed his family, kids are inventing games on a frozen pond. Suffering and joy share the same landscape. You can read this as cruel, or you can read it as honest. Bruegel doesn't flinch either way. The world, as he shows it, is big enough to hold both the dead fox and the laughing skater at once. Look a little closer at that ice. It's not crystal blue, it's a murky, greenish gray. It seems like there are scuffs, cracks, darker patches where the water beneath seems to breathe. In 16th century imagery, ice often symbolized how slippery life is, how quickly you can go from upright to falling. From this high vantage point, some of the figures already have their legs out from under them. They're mid-slip. So the pond isn't just a playground, it's a metaphorical trap. Like the famous bird trap in Bruegel's companion winter painting, a little door held up by a stick that can slam down at any moment. This ice offers pleasure with built-in risk. You go out there for fun, but the surface itself is unreliable. One crack and the game is over. The whole painting is full of these gentle warnings. A house burns quietly in the background. A bucket brigade forms, dwarfed by the landscape. A watermill stands useless, its wheel paralyzed by huge icicles. Human industry has literally frozen. Nature has turned off the machine. And then, above it all, that sky. It's not a crisp, cheerful winter blue. It's a thick, greenish, almost metallic haze that stretches from edge to edge. The light is diffuse. There's no visible sun, but everything is illuminated in this flat, oppressive way, like a day that never fully wakes up. As the land recedes, the little villages shrink into specks, and beyond them rise mountains that absolutely do not belong in the flat low countries. These are Bruegel's Alps, the mountains he swallowed and spat back out after his journey to Italy. He grafts them onto this Flemish scene like a memory or a dream. The effect is to turn this small village into a world landscape, local life dwarfed by something vast, sublime, and indifferent. From the hunters in the foreground all the way to those impossible peaks, every diagonal in the composition funnels your eye into that depth. It feels like the painting never really ends. It just keeps going, valley after valley, all under the same cold sky. From the point of view of these mountains, of this sky, of the world Bruegel constructs, the individual dramas below are just tiny movements. The fox doesn't matter. The skates don't matter. Even the burning house is just a thread of smoke. The universe is not out to get you. It just doesn't particularly care. And yet, and this is crucial, Bruegel doesn't collapse into nihilism. For all its coldness, this painting is surprisingly full of life. Look at how many different things are happening at once. The hunters returning, the bright fire, the skaters, the cart crossing the bridge, the person trudging with a bundle of sticks, the distant church with its sharp steeple, the animals in the fields, the tiny figures near the mill, the crows perched in the trees and flying overhead. The painting is crowded with human attempts to organize, to adapt, to squeeze meaning and community out of a season that could easily kill them. But still, all of them feels like human answers to an indifferent climate. Bruegel was connected to circles of thinkers who believed deeply in human dignity, not because humans are powerful, but precisely because they're weak and still keep going. It's not glory, it's persistence. If you zoom out, you could say the painting asks a simple question. How do you live in a world that is both beautiful and cruel at the same time? One answer is to remember that you are small, that winter doesn't hate you, it just is. Another answer is cautionary. Don't forget that pleasure has a trapdoor under it, that ice can crack, that fires can get out of control. A third answer is that you keep walking, you build communities, you share what little you have, you play on the frozen pond when you can. But Bruegel does something more interesting than choose between those answers. He layers them all on top of each other, in the same image, in the same moment. So when you look at Hunters in the Snow, you're not just looking at a pretty winter scene. You're looking at an entire philosophy of existence compressed into a single day. The crushing indifference of the cosmos, the simultaneous presence of suffering and joy, the constant possibility of disaster, and the stubborn, almost absurd resilience of people who keep showing up anyway. Maybe that's why this painting still feels strangely contemporary. Our winters are changing again, our politics are tense again, our sense of risk and fragility is back on the surface. And we're still just trying to figure out what it means to live decently in a world that can flip from feast to famine, from smooth skating to thin ice in a heartbeat. In the end, Bruegel doesn't offer comfort exactly. What he offers is a kind of clarity. He shows you the hunters and the skaters, the trap and the bridge, the fire and the snow, all at once, and quietly says, "This is the world." Not one part of it, all of it. And once you've seen winter the way he paints it, it's hard not to recognize that same winter, the totality of existence in cold form, out your own window.